Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. With the ever-changing rules around staffing and employment, claiming ignorance is no excuse. You've got to stay on top of it. Business lawyer Paul Cott, principal at law on Lydiard, takes us through some of the new employment rules, including flexible working arrangements, domestic violence leave, paid parental leave, and more. The first issue concerns new laws around pay secrecy. Paul explains to Chris Ashmore that bosses can't prevent their staff from discussing how much they get paid.
If the employer was aware that an employee said to another employee, hey, I'm getting this much, and then they say, how much are you getting? And they all discuss that, whether it's two or more in a group, they're actually allowed to do that now. Whereas in the past, there was a lot of clauses in an employment contract that kept that type of information confidential, and it was a breach of the employment contract for employees to talk about it. Now it's not, you're allowed to, and it's a breach of the contract and of the law that's coming into place if there's a clause in an employment contract that says employees must keep their pay and terms and conditions secret.
Right.
So there's even going to be possibility of penalties on employers who draft contracts and then tell employees or mandate to employees that they must keep their pay and conditions secret.
Something to think about.
Apparently it's aimed at trying to achieve more gender equality so that if these things are out in the open, we've got nothing to hide. If men and women are being paid differently, and that comes out through those discussions, I think the idea around it is to encourage those discussions. The lack of gender equality might be reduced.
Right. Now, employees who request flexible work arrangements, the law has been strengthened, hasn't it? What do you know?
So one of the main things is that if the employer and employee don't agree as to a request for flexible working by an employee, then the employee can take that to the Fair Work Commission, where that's never been the case before. They can take disputes about that to the Commission, who can arbitrate or even deal with it by mediation or conciliation, informal negotiation, in other words. Also, the employer has to give a reason for the refusal or a refusal. A non-response is deemed to be a refusal. The employer has to give the response in writing, and they have to respond within 21 days. And there's a bit of a longer category of people who can now make a flexible working request, to include where an employee might have commitments of their own, so they need to work more flexibly, and or members of their family or household also have commitments of their own that the employer needs to be around to deal with.
So if a staff does ask their boss for more flexibility, the boss can't just say, yeah, mate, I'll wait till later and never get back to them. They've got to respond.
They have to respond within 21 days or it's deemed a refusal. So if there's no response, the employee can just say to the Commission, well, I didn't get a response. It must be a refusal. I want you to deal with it, to the Fair Work Commission.
Right. Now, what are the new laws surrounding paid family and domestic violence leave now?
So this is a fairly welcome one, but it basically means that each employee, that's casuals, part-time or full-time, doesn't matter, across the board gets 10 days per year paid to deal with issues to do with family violence that either the employee themselves are dealing with or a member of their family or household are dealing with. It doesn't carry over from year to year, so it's 10 days. You don't need to accrue it. You get it straight away. As soon as that calendar year starts, you get the 10 days. It's a recognition that some of the things that people need to deal with family violence, such as obtaining intervention orders and perhaps seeing lawyers about that, are things that can only really be done during the day, during working hours or traditional working hours. An interesting benefit to that as well is that employers are now directed to not put the fact that it's family violence leave on the payslip, because the partner of that person might have access to those payslips through emails or through just pieces of paper lying around the house and see that there is family violence leave on the payslip, and then that person suffers further repercussions. So the employer is going to be directed to either put it as other types of leave, sick leave, maybe carers leave, personal leave, or even annual leave. whatever is agreed between the person who needs the leave and the employer, they agree on what's going to go on the pay slip. So that's an added little protection under that aspect.
So they're given 10 paid days leave for domestic and family violence. What if they use that up? Can they rely on unpaid leave?
Yeah, they can. They definitely can. So they can then revert it to unpaid for sure.
Now, workplace sexual harassment, it's something that's been talked about of late more and more, and the law has caught up and strengthened the case. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So previously what really sexual harassment did legally speaking in a workplace is just react to when it happens. What do we do when it happens? Now an employer will actually have a positive duty to stop it or prevent it happening in the first place. Of course, there's never a guarantee. They can't give a guarantee, but they're supposed to actually put in some reasonable steps to at least try to prevent it happening in the first place, such as giving training, being more proactive about monitoring, looking out for signs that an employee may be going through an issue of sexual harassment. It is now also a valid reason to terminate employment if a person commits sexual harassment. It's clear now in the Fair Work Act, it actually says specifically that sexual harassment is a valid reason to terminate employment. Never used to have that, so that's fairly recent as well. I think there's some other provisions in the Fair Work Act prohibiting discrimination based on intersex, pregnancy and breastfeeding as well. So there's other types of discrimination based relating to sexual harassment in a sense being added into the Fair Work Act as well.
There is so much for leaders across industries to manage today, so don't feel like you're alone. There's a great resource actually called Leading Conversations. It's a podcast from leading teams, and it shines a light on the kinds of issues that impact performance, eat away at culture, and how they helped to turn things around. There's 3 full seasons of Leading Conversations available, so start listening at leadingteams.net.au/podcast, or it's free wherever you listen to podcasts.
Now, something different. The use of fixed-term contracts for employees was previously on the rise. Now, new laws come into effect which restrict their use.
Yeah, what the government I think is trying to do here is actually discourage the use of not fixed-term contracts per se, but ones that keep rolling over. So there's going to be a restriction or a limit on maximum amount of renewals will be 1. The contracts will not be able to exceed 2 years in duration. And if you already have, or previously or recently have had one, say, 2-year fixed-term contract, you'll then only be able to renew that once. So I think it's been put into place to provide better job security for employees who just keep getting renewed or rolled over into a fixed-term contract. So that gives them greater job security.
Right. Now, paid parental leave. How has that changed, Paul?
So the change came in on the 1st of July this year. Partnered couples can claim up to 20 weeks paid parental leave between them. Parents who are single at the time of their claim can access the full 20 weeks. So these changes affect employees whose baby is born or placed in their care on or after, as I said, 1 July 2023. Partnered employees will be able to claim a maximum of 20 days pay between them, with each partner taking at least 2 weeks. There is a $350,000 family income limit indexed annually for claiming paid parental leave pay. So this is, as I said, paid parental leave. There's expanded eligibility rules for fathers or partners to claim paid parental leave pay. The whole payment can be flexible so that eligible employees can claim it in multiple blocks up until the child turns the age of 2. And there's a removal of the requirement for a return to work to be eligible for the entitlement.
Right. Well, that's paid parental leave. What about unpaid?
Yep. So again, the changes have just come recently into place on the 1st of July 2023. There is now greater flexibility for employees taking unpaid parental leave. Similarly, if the employer has exhausted their paid parental leave entitlements, they can then go on unpaid parental leave. Employees taking unpaid parental leave will be able to take up to 100 days of their 12-month entitlement flexibly during the 24-month period after the birth of their child, which is a big increase from the previous 30-day entitlement. Pregnant employees will be able to access their flexible unpaid parental leave as well, now up to 6 weeks before the expected date of birth of their child. Employees will no longer be stopped or prevented from taking more than 8 weeks of unpaid parental leave at the same time as their spouse or de facto partner. So both parents will now be able to take up 12 months unpaid parental leave at any time within 2 years of their child's birth, and they can even apply for an extension of up to 12 months beyond the initial 12-month leave amount.
Well, there's much we've covered today, Paul, and a lot of homework for business owners.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, business owners need to be on top of these things. These changes are happening that quickly that even some employment lawyers are probably behind the 8 ball, and some of them are not overly well advertised either or publicised, so you need to be on top of it.
That was Paul Cott, Principal at Law on Lydiard. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.